You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 555, where we're going to talk about one of our favorite clone troopers. Oh, wait, no, wrong episode. No, this is Tales of the Empire. This is the Morgan Elsbeth episode. So we're going to break down all three episodes that premiered here just a few days ago. We've been tied up with all the festivities around May the 4th, and we're just now getting around to it. So pretty excited to finally talk about this and certainly talk about the Barriss Offee, which will be coming here a little bit later down the road. But with me tonight, as always, is Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah, it's really exciting to be able to come back around to this with all the things that we got released to us over May the 4th and the excitement around Phantom Menace 25th anniversary and, fitting it all in. So really an embarrassment of riches right now. This is really exciting to do. And I was really pleasantly surprised, especially with the Morgan Elsbeth arc. It was an arc I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much as I did. So really excited to talk about this one. Of course, we'll come back to Barriss Offee a little later in the week as well. And really excited about that one too.
Yeah. And before we get started, definitely want to say thank you to all of our Patreon members. If you're not a member of Patreon, head out to cantinacast.com/Patreon and sign up. And why don't you do the honors of our roll call? Because we got a new member, too.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, huge thanks to Raphael for joining up at the now part of the tribe tier. So he joins Danny, Rob, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Riss, Justin, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Rita Reborn. And then, of course, the Delusions Granger members, Rod, CJ, Alex, Steve, and Daz. So if you're interested about Patreon, like Albert said, cantinacast.com/Patreon. Remember, at that now part of the tribe tier and above, you do have options of coming on the show, doing fact poi from a certain point of view with us, like we did recently with the top 3 for the Phantom Menace, things that we want to come back and do a little bit more of here too in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for more to come there. And if you're listening to this, thanks so much for the download. We'd appreciate if you come out for the live stream, cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you're watching this, we would really enjoy it if you would leave us a like, leave us a comment. Let us know what you're thinking about these episodes. What do you like most about it? What moment's speaking to you? All that good stuff. And you can join these amazing people in our chat. Jay-Z Skywalker, Steph, One Up versus CPU, Skywalker's Academy, and Sky just joined us as well. So thank you all so much for coming out. The people in the background, we see you as well. We hope you'll say hello in the chat.
Yes. And if you guys have questions, throw them in the chat. We'll get to as many of those as we can as time permits. And just a quick programming note for this Saturday, because Sunday is Mother's Day. So in honor of Mother's Day, we're going to move the episodes that we normally record on Sundays to Saturday. And we'll be back, like we've talked about, for the Barriss Offee breakdown. That'll be 9 p.m. Central. And then right afterwards, we'll wrap up with a Patreon special where Jonesy and I are going to kind of reminisce on the Phantom Menace now that we're here 25 years later. So getting into talking about our personal experiences watching it back in 1999, and then, what it was like to watch it here recently, and then just kind of the impact that movie has had on Star Wars in general, and just how much stuff, like what fruits that movie bared so many years later. There's an endless list at this point, but we're going to talk all things the Phantom Menace. So join us for that Patreon show.
Yeah. And before we get started, have you seen it a second time yet?
I have, yes.
Did you get to see Acolyte on the big screen?
I have not. That is not. Man. It's coming up this week. Okay, so
yeah.
I'll be there Friday for AMC.
Okay, great. Yeah, I went to Cinemark, and they actually tell you before the show, like, stick around for after the credits, and you'll know if you're going to get it or not. But dude, it blows me away on the big screen. It looks so good on the big screen. I know other people have told us this. It looks very cinematic, and so I think you're really going to enjoy it. So really excited to get your thoughts there and kind of what your experience about it. Like I said, there's definitely a really obvious cut.
Oh yeah,
towards the end of that sequence where she whips out the lightsaber. So a lot more in that battle than what you just saw. It's not just that sequence. There's so much more to it. So
yeah,
really excited. It's a really a great way of putting like Acolyte's best foot forward, I think, and getting people wrapped in. So can't wait for you to check that one out.
Yeah, no, can't wait to see it on the big screen. Looking forward to it. Okay, let's talk about Tales of the Empire, the Morgan Elsbeth episodes, and I wanted to start with kind of give me your overall thoughts on how much you enjoyed these 3 episodes as kind of as a group, right? Then compare that to Barasafi's episodes, and then just kind of like, what's our overall take now that we've seen this and Tales of the Jedi? How does it feel having these two kind of next, one another?
Well, I appreciate using the word group. We were talking about before we came on air. We were joking. We were really pleased that they kept these arcs together.
Yeah.
If you remember last time with Tales of the Jedi, we had an Ahsoka episode, and then we had, I think, two episodes of Dooku, and then we had, it was all broken apart, and it didn't really make sense why they were doing that. They were almost trying to keep it maybe in the timeline of it. This one, they just said, no, we're just going to give you those 3 episodes, keep them all together. I think it worked so much better this way so that you don't feel lost. It doesn't feel a little jumbled. I'm not taking anything away from people being able to figure it out, but it just makes more sense for us, and it's more enjoyable to sit down and do 3 episodes and then go do something else if you got to go do something else and come back to it. So I appreciate them doing that. What I like about these Tales of the Empire, what I like about shorts in general, especially canon or canon adjacent shorts like this, is that these are effectively like love letters to us as fans, especially those who are really vested. So the ones who are really, they know the ins and outs of the character. They know there's more to the characters, and they give you more of that backstory that people like you and me and the folks in our live stream love so much, and the people listening to this just love so much, and they want to know all of the little details in between, but they're also meaningful part of their stories that help shape their characters and tell you where they're at. So I think that's what these both Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire have done really well. And I think for the Morgan Elsbeth line in particular, I got to be honest, this was a character I'm not super excited about. It's not a character that really gets me, going or enthusiastic to learn more. And so I wasn't as eager to watch these, but man, that first episode was really, really good. And it actually set the stage wonderfully for Morgan Elsbeth. And I think even the last 2 episodes, the way that they structured the arc, the total arc worked really well in the integration with Thrawn. Like, you can infer a lot from what we know in Rebels with the TIE Defender program, as well as some other things, that they all do really fit so well in there. And I have a lot of questions about whether they went far enough with that. But I like that they really did a good job of helping me, as someone who wasn't really all that interested in Morgan Elsbeth, being a little bit more invested in that character and really appreciating like her journey and all of that goes. And I got to be honest, I'll stop here. We'll get into all the other details later, but oh my gosh, the real General Grievous is back.
Yeah.
And we talked about this when the trailer came out and some of the, the enthusiasm we had for this show. This is original Clone Wars General Grievous, who is a terror and a menace and a stalking presence. He's like the Freddy Krueger, the Jason, the Michael Myers, whatever. The cackling and the laughing he had in the background, the chuckling, and the way they used some of the surround space was absolutely phenomenal. Matthew Wood, knocking it out of the park yet again. Yeah. But the way that they actually made him a terrifying presence and a horror-like presence, I thought was absolutely phenomenal. And I was so happy to have it. And he looked glorious in the lighting that they had with the lightsabers and the animation. Absolutely glorious. But I'll pause there and get your thoughts.
Well, I'm going to echo a lot of the same stuff, and we did not share notes beforehand. But so let me pick up where you just left off. I'll jump around here. So the first episode, Path of Fear, like Massacre is kind of the companion episode, or maybe this is the companion episode to Massacre from the Clone Wars season 4. That is like one of the best. Like it's up there as far as one of the best episodes of the series, in my opinion. It's just so brutal, and it's so haunting, and it's terrifying, and it gets on the cusp of being horror-like. And couple that with the way we see Grievous portrayed in here, and he was just probably as menacing in that episode, but there's something about this episode in particular that just kind of elevates it. Whether it's the way it was written, the fact that the animation is so much better. Like, as much as I love the Clone Wars animation, when I watched this and then I went back and watched Massacre, I was like, oh wow, there's hard. Like a stark difference here in terms of the quality of the frames and the polygons that they're using, the shading, the lighting, everything about it. But that's not to take anything away from that episode. It's still phenomenal beginning to end. But yeah, when you compare those two, it's just it fits so well into it, and just I don't know. I love that, having these two together now. As far as like the titles of the episodes, right? The Fear, Anger, and Hate.
Oh, it was a great progression. Yeah, the
progression was awesome, right? The fear of Grievous and the fear of them coming back is prominent in this episode. In the second one, the anger towards, the separatists or maybe something else. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But that kind of drives her to kind of side with the Empire. And at the very end, it's that hatred, honestly, the hatred of her own people at that point, or her quote, her people, whatever, the people of Corvus and everyone else around her that eventually drives her into like suffering, which is where I think we see her at when we get to the Ahsoka series. So I love that they piggybacked on that for all the different titles. I would say these episodes if I compare them to the Barriss Offee episodes, I don't know. It's probably equal ground for me, honestly.
They're different. Yeah, they're different.
They are different. If I compare these to Tales of the Jedi, I still think Tales of the Jedi wins. For me personally, I think they're better episodes. However, there's enough in here, and this is kind of what you were talking about here. I think there is, anyways. There's enough in these episodes where I can see somebody making the argument of, I like these better than the Tales of the Jedi episodes, right? There's enough content here for it. When we get to that second episode, like that one didn't sit. The first one, first off, when I watched it the first time, blew me away, right? I got in the second, third episode, but I was kind of half watching, kind of not half watching, right? I was doing some other stuff. I think it was editing, doing show notes, whatever we were doing. And I didn't really sit with it. When I actually sat with it as a Rebels fan, I really like that second episode a lot. And there's not really, outside of the ruck fight, which is just kind of, just one-on-one, there really wasn't a whole lot going on. There was a lot of dialogue.
Where's your brother? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
He finally gets
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's his moment. He's not even watched this yet. But yeah, there wasn't really kind of a whole lot there going on. So the third one is probably the weakest of the three for me, but I really like the first two. So all I'm saying is, I'm with you. Like the Morgan Elsbeth episodes definitely impressed me. I'm not sure we got to remember too, the last thing I'll say about these and Tales of the Jedi. What's the purpose? The purpose is just to fill in the gaps, right? We shouldn't look at these as like whole episodes or whole seasons of things, right? That's not fair to what they're trying to do here. They're really just kind of hyper-focusing on some element that they're trying to explain and give you more context around, and that's really it. So that's why we're in and out in 15 minutes. And so when you look at it from that perspective, I think they did a really great job. What they crammed in for these 15-minute episodes, 12 after you remove everything, it's pretty amazing. I really enjoyed it.
I think that's where the Morgan Elsbeth arc struggles a little bit more than maybe the Barriss Offee arc does, because it seems like for the Morgan Elsbeth, it's kind of more of a slow burn type of story, right? There's a lot of burning on the imagery if you're watching the live stream, but there's more to it. You could just tell there's a lot more story there and more things that have to happen to where they're just not able to get it all on the page and on the screen, I think. And I think that's maybe one of the things that hurts it a little bit. When I compare it with Tales of the Jedi, I'm sorry, like the Dooku arc is still, I think, the cream of the crop for all four of these arcs between Jedi and Empire. It's just so well done, how impactful, how powerful it is. But I would put this season, or put Tales of the Empire as a package, probably slightly, at least on par, if not slightly above the total package of what we have for Tales of the Jedi. And I think it's that strong of storytelling, and like you were just saying, is filling in these gaps, but it's also filling in some pretty meaningful ones. I think I think Barriss Offee maybe a little bit more direct to us because we have a lot more invested in that character, for the duration at least. But I think with Morgan Elsbeth, though, I think it was a really great way of bringing that character a little bit more to life and rounding that character out for us, though. So really excited about this one.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into Path of Fear, which is the first episode. And they literally dump you right into the middle of Massacre, the episode on the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And, Dathomir is already burning. I love the music, by the way. I didn't get a chance to look to see who did the music on this one. I don't know if you saw.
No, I didn't, yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Like, it fit pretty well. There was times when it felt very Clone Wars-ish, very John Williams-ish, and then it still kind of had that modern... Tales of the Jedi, I feel that the ominous sound and that happens with the titles is wonderful. I don't know what's going on there, but I love it. I'm all for it. So, but yeah, we get to finally see Mother. So when we were kind of predicting, breaking down the trailer, we had predicted this would be somebody else. Not necessarily that it would be Morgan Elsbeth's mother, because I was still, thinking that was the Bug story, which we already talked about yesterday. So go watch that and you'll get to hear what our conclusion was, whether or not Bug is really Morgan Elsbeth. But nonetheless, in this episode, we finally see her mom, which is Mother Selena, I guess is what they call her. And we got to see the skies. She pulled those out, and she gets backed in that corner. And this is where I was like, holy crap. I was not expecting that one girl to say, come on. And suddenly that saber goes right through her chest. That's the General Grievous that you were talking about. That's the terrifying psychopath killer that I think, in Legends, he was certainly there, and we had moments and shades of it during the Clone Wars, but it was in full force, no pun intended here. I mean, it was just, and then again, like you said, the animation, just the frames per second, the lighting effects. There's that one shot, and I'm jumping around here because we basically have a big battle going on here now. But there's that one shot when I think Morgan, it's right before Morgan sees her mom get killed, and she's kind of far away, and you can see him, and he's fighting the mother, and his lightsabers are just twirling. It looks like a blur, and it's almost kind of out of focus in a way, but it looks real. Like the animation looks so real, as much as real as you can get with somebody like General Grievous. But we definitely got to see the mother enchanting the weapons as well. That was kind of cool to see that. But I guess, what did you think about the overall fight here that we got in front of our eyes?
What was interesting, I didn't realize at the first, is do you know who voiced the mother?
I saw it was Ina Santo.
Yeah, it was Jenna Leon Santo. So she did both, of course, the older Morgan, but she also did the mother, and there was another actress that did the younger
Morgan Elsbeth.
Yeah, the younger, which I thought was really a nice thing. And you wouldn't know it just by listening right away. It was really, it was a nice difference there. But yeah, it was really nice because this was good because I think for a long time, we've had debates and conversation about what all did they wipe out on Dathomir. Like, did they wipe all of the Night Sisters out? Was it just Mother Talzin's clan or whoever? But it was a thorough cleansing of this planet, I think, is what this episode is really, and it seems like it is showing us. And they keep coming back because they want to make sure they got everybody. It wasn't just a one and done, just storm the planet and kill everything and just feel like you did a good job and you leave. Like, no, they hung around. They had the droid ships and everything else to make sure that they came back. I like the inclusion of the Mountain Clan here too. I'm excited to talk about them a little bit too, because they have their origins way back like in the 80s, and believe it or not. So really cool there. But man, Grievous, the fight with the mother, I think was really great. I didn't know if that was actually her biological mother, or if they just called them, if everybody just called her the mother or mother. Same for the Mountain Clan, but whichever doesn't matter too much. But man, I really thought this was great. You kind of see the headstrongness of all of this too.
Mm-hmm.
And as it goes through, I like that even the markings of the Night Sisters fade, which was something I was not expecting, but makes total. I mean, I should have been expecting something, but it was a question we had about how that works. But
yeah,
that was kind of neat too. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. I mean, as fun as a slaughter is, I suppose, but this was really important for us to be able to see how the other Night Sisters, dress and behave and act and things like that too. And they're quite consistent, and even some callbacks to like Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah. To go back to the fight, I had a couple of comments here around the fight itself. I did enjoy the fact that General Grievous starts the fight with two sabers, and he's always, and this is kind of common for him, right? He lulls you into sleep thinking it's only two, and then when you least expect it, he pops out three, maybe four at that point, and that's exactly how he gets the mother, of course. I love that about him. I
like his fighting style too, because his fighting style sometimes mimics Jedi's to where you can see where the influence is. And they captured a couple of moments in particular I thought really well here.
I have choreography as another highlight of the fight. Very well choreographed with him. There was a moment there where he had stepped on Morgan Elsbeth, he stepped on Mother Selena, and he could have killed her. She was on her back. He had her pinned down. And instead, he lifts her and throws her, which I think is, I don't know, it feels like Grievous was kind of, I wouldn't say, well, he probably was toying with her. Like, I did feel like Mother Selena was out of her league, honestly. She wasn't going to be able to go toe-to-toe with Grievous, I'm sorry. I mean, Saj Ventress has a hard time. The Jedi
wasn't going to be able to sustain it, I think, at the very least.
Right.
And that's what Grievous does. He wears you down over time.
Yeah. But, I mean, the fact that he was, he threw her and decided to let the fight go on, I think speaks to just how confident he was that he was going to kind of win that.
Right.
He got to chime in with the wipe them out, all of them line. There's also in the massacre line, he says a line in there. I can't remember what it is now. He says, "Begin landing our troops," which is kind of what Palpatine says, of course. But it's just funny how he kind of mirrors those lines from time to time. I don't know why, but I thought it was hilarious. Anyways.
Hey, we're all in the spirit of Phantom Menace 25 years later.
Yeah, right. And then at the very end there, when Morgan is kind of running and she's basically hiding, and she's got that one clone or that one droid that's kind of stalking her, and the way the droid kind of shoots around the base of the tree, whatever, the branch of the tree makes her fall. you can hear her the entire time. She keeps hearing this laughter. And they did a good job of continuing to play that laughter over and over again, right? That really sickening laughter from Grievous.
Right.
And that becomes something that, of course, pays off in a little bit later. And it plays into, like I said earlier, it plays into the whole title of it. She's absolutely shocked and she's absolutely stunned, and she's fearful of Grievous, and that laughter like haunts her the entire time. Later on, I think we're going to try to tackle the question of like, who does she want revenge against? And I think it's Grievous, but more on that, I guess, as we move on. That's a little still cloudy and nebulous as to what exactly revenge looks like for her.
Yeah.
But I do feel like she is kind of pinning that Grievous at least is the poster boy for everything that happened. So, of course, she's found by the Mountain Clan witches. She wakes up and she's got two elders around here. The tattoos fade. That, like you said earlier, that answers the question that we had in the trailer breakdown of like, what happened to her markings? Okay, well, that does kind of explain it. The next shot is beautiful. Like when she's, I think the mother says, come out and see what the day has wrought, and, the dark day or whatever. And they walk out there and she's kind of overlooking the landscape. And like you said, it's like everything is burning at this point. So it sounds like they were pretty thorough. I would agree too. I mean, I don't know that they went to all ends of, Dathomir on the back ends or wherever else, but definitely, I mean, it looks like they covered a pretty large swath of that general area wherever the Night Sisters had any kind of influence or power or kind of roamed around.
So what did you think of the Mountain Clan? Like, so the Mountain Clan, these folks actually originated back like in the courtship of Princess Leia, I think, in one of the books, right? So, gosh, 40 years ago, kind of crazy. But what do you think about the Mountain Clan? And I guess even with their mother, they dressed in brighter clothes, white or light gray, something to that effect, compared with the dark reds of the traditional Night Sisters, or the Night Sisters that we're most familiar with. Like, do you think there's a difference in the way? I mean, and of course later on we see her use this great big ball of light, right?
Yeah.
Do you think they actually use different aspects of the Force too? Do you think these clans are a light versus dark type of thing, and maybe that's some of the disconnectedness, and maybe the why Morgan she kind of shrugs off any kind of kindness from the other clan, and they just have differing maybe philosophies on this. Do you think it's a light versus dark type of thing with the variations of Night Sisters clans?
I do, and I would say, if going back to what we covered last night, we covered that bug storyline, and we said the same thing. Like, there is the clan that, not to get into the specifics, but there is a group of witches, and they are not about war and destruction. They're about life and about creation, and that's how they actually create a Night Sister. Well, technically not a Night Sister, but they create a witch of that clan by imbuing it with life and singing lullabies at night, right? It's an absolute stark difference between what we see with the Night Sisters. The Night Sisters, again, based on what I'm seeing here, based on that storyline by Bug, they have a reputation for being basically, I would call them warriors, right? And definitely out for physical combat and death and destruction. And that's just kind of what they do. But there are other clans out there that are tapping into the magics of the Force that are not doing that. They're doing the exact opposite. So yes, the short answer is yes. These guys, the Night Sisters, I would pick, maybe peg more into the dark side of things, although they're not necessarily technically evil all the time, but they're more in the dark side of things. Whereas these other clans, like this Mountain Clan here, they're not. I mean, these are clearly pacifists. At the very end, she even says, that when they're talking about the way, we'll get into that here in a little bit, their way is pacifism. They're not an aggressive group. And that's when she makes that whole comment about, hey, just because we choose not to fight doesn't mean we can't. So yeah, I see them as kind of light side, dark side, at least another sect of the Force magic that is very unlike what we see with the Night Sisters.
Yeah, and to go back to thank you for all of it. I think the other thing just to go back to with the spell markings fading from her face, I think this is also, it was important to see that because I think it also explains why we don't see Morgan Elsbeth really doing a lot of magic in the first place. And we do see some of this when she's doing the map in Ahsoka, but it would explain a little bit about why she's not so keen to go on the magic. Maybe it's a very limited pool, or maybe she's disconnected from it. Maybe this is similar to like the Force, like after you've not used it for a while, your ability to communicate and do things with it, diminish over time. But, in losing whatever that presence is from the mother, there's something that emanates from the central party. I think Mother Talzin was a little bit like this too. When she passed, a lot of things changed for for those sets of witches as well. So
Yeah.
I like that we do get those connections, and that helps explain a little bit about why. Well, she's a witch. Why doesn't she use powers and stuff? And we see it in a very limited function, but I like that we do get some explanation there as well.
Yeah, in Skywalker's Academy, Dale's asking different magic, and I mean,
Right.
maybe and I know that may sound sacrilegious, and there's probably gonna be people screaming about this now, thinking, "Oh my gosh, they're changing Star Wars." And
I think
no, I don't know if they're changing it. They're just
Yeah.
it's an evolution. So many other things have evolved in Star Wars, and will continue to evolve in Star Wars. And so I can see, where they could say it's a different kind of magic, still force based in some way, right? But definitely different in that regard. His other question is they could influence midichlorians to create life. That's kind of what I was thinking they did to create the character's name is Yenna. And there's something special about her. By the way, last night I didn't get a chance to say my theory. And after we stopped the show, I told Lauren, I'm like, crap, I never even talked about the theory I was saying I was going to talk about. And maybe, let me throw it out there real quick. And then just as an aside, sorry. But at the very end of the Ahsoka series, they go back to Dathomir. And for all intents and purposes, I think you and I speculated maybe there's a couple witches there. The chance of coming back to life and rebirth is great on Dathomir, just in general, because of the planet itself. But my theory was based on that bug story. This character of Yenna is a young girl who is like, she's called Talzin's prize, right? So Talzin wanted her. And my theory is that she may actually have she may be part of whatever that next chapter is for the Dathomirian witches, because it sounds like she is able to bring people back to life. She's kind of like a good witch, I guess, in that sense, because she was brought to life herself. She may play a part in the rebirth, if you will, of Dathomir. I'm not saying they need her, but if there's any kind of, any credence to that story or any weight to that story, that would be a good way to incorporate that character as kind of and she's almost kind of like a chosen one as well. I'm using air quotes here because they never say that, but there is something special about her. So I'd love to see that character come back whenever that happens. But yeah, back to what we were talking about. Definitely some kind of different take on the Force than what we've seen with the Night Sisters.
Yeah, really love some of the design here too. Just briefly, the mountain and the dwellings being carved into the side of the mountain, of course, are very reminiscent of some of the things we have out here in the Southwest, and some of those types of dwellings as well. But that was really cool. It was just so natural, and it was just so perfect for a clan that would be more in tune with what we would potentially call the living force, or with natural things rather than the unnatural. To make a living on the side of the mountain. Of course, they are the mountain clan, but it was just beautiful to look at. They really did an amazing job of integrating that in with the terrain.
Yep. Naveed says, how awesome is Barriss Offee's helmet and armor? Star Wars needs more characters in that type of gear. Agreed, and we will hit that on Saturday. Come back for the Saturday show when we talk more about Barriss Offee.
Yeah, but of course, a huge thing. Yeah, welcome to the new folks there, Naveed and Rainer.
Yeah, Rainer says, hey guys, this is the first time I've been able to hit the live show. I love these Tales of the Empire episodes. Yeah, we said the same thing up at the very top, man. So glad you guys could make it out. All right, so back to the story. She's out now by the campfire at this point. This is after she's cried. She at one point at the very end there, when she sees what's happened to her land and her people, this is when she falls to one knee, pounds the fist. She's crying, and this is where all that kind of fear starts to really set in. The next scene. She's campfire, sitting in front of a campfire, staring at that. And my gosh, talk about traumatic. She's sitting there staring at a fire when everything else is just in smoldering. And of course, she starts to hear the laughter of General Grievous, right? That fear starts to creep into her. And so she feels like, okay, I need to do something with this fear. I need to take action, right? And this, I love the fact that she was out there trying to quietly influence the other Mountain Clan witches, who are, again, pacifists at heart and in nature. But she's out there trying to petition for hey, we got to prepare ourselves. They're not done. They're going to come back. You guys, you're sitting here living this life of nothing can touch you or nothing's going to harm you. And you clearly don't understand what you just saw and what happened. If it happened to us, it can happen to you, kind of thing. That's kind of her message throughout all of this. I think that this is where the elder tells her, tries to separate her and says, hey, go out with Nolly. Was it Nolly? Yeah, I think it was Nolly.
Yeah.
Go out with her on the hunt. And that's just another opportunity for her to kind of make her case to Nolly about, hey, we've got to do something here because these droids, and we do get firsthand, they're still out there. They're still roaming around. So, I think her fears are certainly validated, but I don't think she feels safe at all kind of hanging around with these, Mountain Clan witches.
Yeah, and let's think about when we're afraid, and especially when we see characters that have had great power, or at least have had experiences wielding great power and influence. When they get afraid of something, they start to get desperate. They start to want to motivate everybody else because they feel like they have to take action, constantly
Mm-hmm.
take action, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order to eschew that fear and keep it at bay and to basically feed it. But all it's doing is quickly turning into what we have next episode with the path of anger, right? So she's just looking to strike back. She's just in, and again, all of this to just, give her somehow allow her mind to be able to process everything that's happened and to at least have vengeance at this point. It's not quite revenge or anything quite like we get at the very end of the arc, but we're definitely getting this idea of vengeance and needing to strike back. I need to protect myself. Why can't you people see this as well? And the mother says it really well and so succinctly, right? She's not going to give fear the chance to take root. And by having that path, now some of the things that the mother says, I'm a little curious about, and I want to talk about this too. If we just leave the droids alone, they'll leave us alone. I don't think that's ever worked anywhere. But
No.
but again, the premise though is there, and it's very much like a Jedi premise and very much like a light side premise of saying, look, we can only handle the things that we can control. We will be prepared, and the mother finally comes back around later on talking about fighting, but in this moment, she's at least saying, look, we can't live our lives in fear, expecting the worst to happen and trying to be prepared for all of these eventualities. We just need to trust in our way, in our path, knowing that that's the right path for us and that we won't deviate from that. And we'll confront these things, but it doesn't mean that you're blind to them at the same time. Now, in typical good guy fashion, they don't really talk about what their plans are, right? Which is always, you breed a little bit of discomfort and you bring some of those questions. And this is why people usurp those people in power quite a bit,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So, but I like the idea, and I like the parallels here of the Mountain Clan with the Jedi compared to maybe the Night Sisters and other dark side or Sith. Maybe Sith is not quite the right comparison there, but the different sects that start to pull apart and the different ways they want to approach this stuff, and where Morgan Elsbeth is leaning and influencing all the others because they start to feel this fear too, right?
Mm-hmm.
That uncertainty, they've never seen something like this. And like you said, they're more of a passive group. So they're willing to step back and not worry about some of these. And they're a bit distanced themselves physically from everybody else too. So it's more difficult for someone to do something to them. But, the mechaniques, they can get anywhere they want with all of their droid ships and everything else.
Yep. Yeah, they're almost treating the Empire like a bee, right? You leave it alone, it won't sting you. But we know that's a wasp. It's one of those nasty wasps that just wants to kill you. So eventually she does get her way, right? I mean, she's kind of persistent, her being Morgan, persistent in basically wearing down Nolly and the other two witches as part of this clan. She eventually convinces them that we do need weapons. And although Nolly was pushing back, saying, "Hey, we should trust our path," which of course they give into, and they make that journey to the weapons locker. And then of course the droids show up. We can kind of see them. They all get into the droids find them, and they get into the big fight, of course, right? And this is, Morgan's hands is now the death of Nolly. And again, I don't know if this is really the daughter of the mother, or like you said earlier, maybe it's just that mother, or the leader is kind of like the title or whatever. But yeah, I mean, they were getting their butts handed to them pretty bad, and it looked like it was going to go south until the mother shows up. And she creates that kind of force barrier. Now we talked about this during the.
Did she teleport down there?
I don't know. Maybe
it kind of feels like she did, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe she was able to teleport in some way. Because it's kind of seems like it's a pretty long hike to get down where they were. Because I mean, they were knee deep in the Night Sisters area at that point. But
yeah, they were down like in the marsh area.
Yeah. But really cool effect, seeing that her show up and just that big bright light blow up and blow everybody out. So, I mean, that really took us for a turn during the trailer breakdown because we've never seen anything like that. I mean, you and I were like, was this a Jedi? It seems very Jedi-like to do something like that. And her magic, at least in that moment, we don't know exactly what they do, but that's still a very kind of Jedi-like ability when you think of like KOTOR. And not necessarily killing, but just pushing back like that, right? As a force, it's a very kind of light side ability as well. So very cool. Love the effect on that. Of course, Nolly dies. This is where the mother says, "You must not assume just because someone does not want to fight, they are not capable." Now,
Right.
where is my daughter? And of course, this is where she mentioned that her dog didn't make it, right? Yeah, and then I thought it was very sweet that the mother picks up and picks up Nolly. She gives her a kiss on her forehead. Again, stuff that you don't see Night Sisters do, right?
Right.
I will say this: in watching Massacre, there is an aspect of the Night Sisters where they do, I think they sincerely do love one another when they
Oh,
talk about,
absolutely.
yeah, you know what I mean. So that's why it's hard to pin them as like they're not Sith. They're probably dark side users, but they do have compassion about them, which is not a character trait that you would find generally at all with dark side or Sith. So, anyways, we all know this. We've talked about this probably ad nauseum before over the years, but they are kind of in a little weird kind of thing. But it was very interesting to see the mother of this clan kiss the daughter that had died. And she says, "As it appears your path is set, Morgan Elsbeth, I pity for you, for I see what is to come." And I don't know if to take her literally, like she's seen a vision of what happens to Morgan Elsbeth, or the fact that what's to come is you've now started down the path of the dark side, and forever will it dominate your destiny, kind of thing. But how did you interpret that, and anything else you want to add to the fight that we had there with them?
Yeah, I interpreted much, I think, towards the latter. Like she's seen this story before. She knows how it ends. It would be pretty cool if she had some sort of vision or something to go along with that. We don't have any clear indication of that, but it's kind of irrelevant at that point. It's pretty obvious that she's steering not only her own path, but others around her and influencing them in a certain direction that is, it's at odds with what the Mountain Clan is. And so she told her that she could stay with them until she determined her path. And the path she chose is one that's not in align with the Mountain Clan. I think the other part was, I'm glad you had the quote there about just because you don't want to fight doesn't mean you're not capable of fighting. Morgan Elsbeth probably should have remembered that a little bit later on, right? Because by the time we get to Corvus and we get to the events of the Mandalorian, Wing and some of these others, it's the little things in some of there. We'll talk about this come to the third episode, but just because these people choose not to push back and choose not to do anything doesn't mean that they are not capable and not will, or that they won't in certain circumstances. And so,
Yeah.
again, she fails to learn the lessons, right, that were taught of her in these moments because she's so consumed with everything else going on and a bit self-centered. So, but no, I think you did a great job of summarizing the rest of it there.
Yeah. One Up versus CP said, "Didn't Grogu do that?" Talking about the Force push. Yep. I think he did. And then, Dale's agreeing that she says she just knows she's seeking revenge and it's not going to go well, right? We've all seen this story before many, many times.
Yep.
Okay, let's get into Path of Anger. And out of the gate, I just want to say, like, I love the idea that this was Morgan Elsbeth's design. Like, this was her idea, like this TIE Defender, because it does feel it's always felt very non-Empire. And I think they did a good job of establishing that with the feedback they were getting from all the high ups there in that room. Like, we're like, this is so not what we do, right? It's
Right.
not about shields and saving our people, whatever. They're minions. We'll bring more in and they'll die too. It's a numbers game as far as they're concerned. They learned a lot of those same lessons from the Separatist battle.
And Thrawn says this much later on, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the one thing that stood out from her pitch, of course, is the fact that Corvus is, quote, rich with raw goods and materials. And I love that those two admirals just kind of looked over each other like, yeah, there we go. That's what we need right there. It's the only thing they heard.
Yeah. Well, it's the only part they wanted to know, right? They wanted to see what else there was behind all of this. And as soon as they got it, they're like, hey, we'll be on our way. Why don't you roll out the welcome mat for us?
I mean, he even says, we'll rightfully take what is ours.
Yeah.
So and that's their last parting words of it. Was not expecting Paleon to show up.
I was not either. That was a really nice surprise. Same actor though that did it in Mandalorian too.
Yeah, I should have known, but I love the fact that he came up and he's such an interesting character. He's starting to become more interesting now that we've got more screen time with it. I really loved him in the Heir to the Empire series and the Zahn books, and I've missed him a lot because I feel like he's had very limited. He really has. He's had a very limited role so far. Even in Rebels, he was just kind of there. Right. But seeing things like this and just kind of what his role is and just hearing him talk and being kind of that liaison to Thrawn, there's something about it that's just very, I don't know. It's bringing up back old feelings, if you will.
Yeah. But to go back to the TIE Defender program briefly, I know some people have had an issue. They really thought this should have been Thrawn's baby. It was Thrawn's idea. He was the one pushing for it and all of that. I understand that perspective. I think
Mhm.
the other part that I like about this, though, and it actually is a testament to Thrawn, and I think empowers his character even more and makes him more interesting, is that he sees value in what other people bring, out of the box thinking, different ideas, innovation, and things that will actually push the narrative forward. Rather, it will push the actual agenda and accomplishment of their goals forward rather than just the pure ambition for power.
Mhm.
And so I love that a character like Thrawn can see that genius. Pelion sees that genius as well and says, we want to take that and then we'll adopt that. So it's not the stealing of ideas like she was worried about. Okay, now you're going to take our resources, now you're going to take our, my plans. No, well, not specifically in that case, because no one really wanted Thrawn's idea anyway. But kind of, yes, we do want to take that because it is great, and we'll take care of that. Here's what we want you to be able to do, like Thrawn will lay out for her later on in life, of course. But I like that. I think it does a good job for Thrawn's character, and also pulls Morgan Elsbeth up another level too of things that we didn't know that she was capable of. We didn't know she had more of a mechanical ability of understanding these things. I mean, she just views it as logic. So clearly, she has a natural inclination for some of this, and maybe studied and developed this over time. But living in the where the Night Sisters live, you don't expect a lot of technological advancement on that type of scale, right? Of doing a TIE Defender. So it was really cool to be able to see that progression for her, but also the aspect that Thrawn comes in and says, wait, hold on, they're all idiots, but what you've done here is fantastic, and I can take that and run with that and find a way of at least making that a possibility for our empire, cost notwithstanding, because everything's cost related and we have to cut budgets. But well, whatever. Money and Star Wars and the Empire have been an interesting issue for a very long time, but it continues to persist here.
Yeah, I mean, and this is not out of character for Thrawn. So anybody that says that, you go back and read all the books because you're just, I mean, you're lost. Honestly, he's known how many of those. I mean, yes, he still is a very stern leader.
You're so right, but it was great to see it finally on screen. I think that's the part that's weird. It's like people haven't been able to see it on screen. It is tucked in the books, and it's so frequent in the books. It's such a great example.
Right.
Yeah.
The people they want to work with, they want to do for good for him, right?
Yeah.
They want to do their best for him. And that's the difference. I mean, that is the X factor whenever he's dispatched somewhere versus just, this, whatever this other idiot is called or whoever, any of the other admirals, right? This is why he makes it all the way up to Grand Admiral and is still around. He's lived the longest because of this. But yeah, I mean, Pelion says, Thrawn sees your vision. He uses that exact word, right?
Yeah.
He sees the vision that you have. He admires you for your vision. Whereas these other ones were just kind of writing her off as like, oh, yeah, whatever. I don't really care about any of that stuff. But yeah, no, it's a great point. I'm glad you mentioned that because it does well for Thrawn. It does well for Morgan Elsbeth because now, I mean, yeah, she's still at the very end of this episode, I think, in it simply just because she wants revenge and she's very transparent about it. But she's transparent about it because she's starting to feel like she can trust Thrawn. That's why she's so loyal to him when we see her in the Ahsoka series. And we asked that question over and over again when we were watching Ahsoka, remember? Like, why does she care? Like, why is she so, loyal to Thrawn, like somebody like Thrawn? Well, because he saw her vision, and he gave her the resources she needed to put this plan together, and she got to at least probably see it, the TIE Defender program, although limited, we never really got to see much of it.
Yeah.
I think it was like one that they actually created in dispatch and was in combat, but nonetheless, it was great that we got to see that. Okay. She gets back over to Corvus, and of course, everybody's upset with her. We assume, I guess it's safe to assume at this point, she was promising them, riches and glory and prosperity and, all the hard work that they had been putting in, basically working as slaves without that actual title until later, was going to be paid off as soon as the Empire came and started cutting, fat checks for all of them. They were going to retire. And of course, that didn't happen. So, I mean, that's a tough message to come back and deliver. Not only that, but then the message she's delivering is like, well, they just kind of want our resources and not her people or not her ideas. So, of course, they start to turn on her, right? And I think that's probably the natural thing to do because I would imagine she's been a tyrant. She's had that vision that she had that she talks about a little bit later. And so she probably has been driving these people into the ground to try to kind of make sure that she, made her own fate and that she was able to kind of see her vision through.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. We've seen this play out in real life countless times. I mean, we've seen, well, hell, we'll just equate this like Star Wars video games, right? There's been times where a Star Wars video game, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort has been put into a lot of long, hard hours, and then it gets canned and people come out afterwards, and you feel the frustration, you feel the pride in what they were doing and where they were going, only for it to get, cut off with a knee at some, high percentage of what it's been done. And it just feels like the floor's been ripped out under you. It's the same when you lose a job or something like that. It just feels like everything you worked so hard to do is not appreciated. And then you start to realize that it was never for you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that's like the real dagger, and it's the general grievous in your back when you're not expecting it, right?
Yeah.
That's the one that really gets you. And that's what the people of Corvus are feeling like. Look, they may have made some concessions on some of their values too, right? About what they want to do and the things that they've sacrificed. They said, we've sacrificed so much, and you really feel it too. And I think those types of things are important, but also she's able to maintain control, which I think is the interesting part. This is one of the things I wish they would have explored a little bit better of how does she maintain control, for so long. I'm guessing it's by force. I mean, it seems to be the obvious one, but that's another aspect. I wish that there was something else there of like, what were they actually working on? Like, where were they working? Were they in the fields? Were they within the compound? It was never really clear what value they continued to do. And even once Thrawn comes in with his starships or his Star Destroyers and says, here's the first part of your mission, like we still get a really great idea. And I think that's one of the things that might have weakened the arc a little bit for Morgan Elsbeth's story, is that we still don't have a really good idea of what the tasks were and what she was doing with the people that really drove things down so much. But before we maybe get into some of that, I did want to take a step back and say Corvus, right? So Corvus, when we're introduced to it in The Mandalorian, is barren, it's burned, it's everything, right? When we're introduced now, it's a very lush planet. It's the trees are right up to the compound almost. There's trees inside the compound. There is some industry in the background. So there is some industry, but it's not as widespread as what we see in the next episode, where everything is much dingier. You have a much closer representation to where we're going in The Mandalorian. Of course, by the end of that episode, we see what happens. But I do like that we get the evolution and the destruction of Corvus throughout these episodes, which we theorized was probably going to happen. We were going to get that backstory. But I think the thing that would have strengthened some of that was, what was the effect of the people of doing all of these things, and what were they doing? For all the resources that we had, we didn't really see much of that going on. So that would have been nicer to strengthen that story a little bit, I think.
Yeah, Stephanie says the show was so short, maybe they will explore it in different media.
I think that's a possibility, yeah.
Yeah, and Morgan Elsbeth is such a character that's beloved now, rightfully so. So, it's very possible they'll do something like that. I kind of walked away. I get what you're saying. I totally do. I think I just assumed at this point that compound is not the reach of where she's at. Like if they've got all these resources and they've been doing all this stuff to build the TIE Defender program and everything, they've got to have it's got to be massive. I mean, she's got to have more people. Maybe we don't see it, and I think that's what you're saying, is there's kind of a shortcoming there.
They make a comment about it. They say that she's controlling the system, right? Or there's a system of planets.
I think they said multiple, right?
Yeah, exactly. But again, it's really hard to tell because it seems like it's really contained within that compound. So it's difficult to expand my way of thinking to be able to really understand what her reach is and what her power and where that power. I just have a lot of questions, I guess, and they just they weren't laid out for me. I guess I just need them laid out for me, Albert. Maybe that's just all it is. But but I think, to be fair, though, I think it was really difficult to understand, like, how did she accumulate that kind of power? Why does she have that kind of power? What is she doing with it? Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily mesh real well about, okay, well, they just storm the castle and there's a lot more of them at this point than her. So, seems like there's options there. But again, we're trying to keep these short. So,
yeah. Well, there's, the comment, she says, "These are not my people. How could they ever be?" Like, it almost feels like that was kind of like a sour grapes kind of moment for her. Like, I think at one point she may have been thinking, okay, yeah, I'm a hard ass and I'm still, I'm making these guys work till all ends of the hour and terrible person. But, they're doing it for me. And when this is all over, they're going to see me as their leader. And those are I think she kind of kept them close. But I think here, now that they've suddenly churned on her, she's like, okay, well, never mind. These people are not my people. And that's where this whole kind of the separation really starts to kind of happen. By the time we get to the next episode, they hate her and she freaking hates them. And it's mutual, right? I mean, she's a tyrant she's a war criminal in a lot of ways. But it was kind of like a turning point here.
Do you think that she's looking for that replacement of the clan in some way, or even still? I mean, yeah, she's working them to death and she's trying to get that representation or that favor or whatever it might be. But do you think she's trying to
No, that's
maybe not fulfill that, but she's trying to fill that void too with power and ambition and everything else. Do you think there's any aspect of that?
I think I see it more as that the clan was her family. These are her work associates, or these are her employees, kind of thing, And that's probably it. I don't think it goes any further than that. Unfortunately, I can't see that with her character, anyways. But yeah, something catches us. She catches something out of the side of her eye, and we get the ruck fight, which I thought was great. We got to see the spear come out. We'll get to all the stuff that wasn't answered. I have this in my list of like, okay, where did she get the spear? I'll save it for the very end. But great fight. Love to see him. Love to see the fact that he was back. Isn't it Warwick Davis that does?
Yeah, Warwick Davis does the sounds or the voice.
The grunts, at least.
The grunts, yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that the guards, no one came to her defense. And I think one point there was somebody that asked, should we help her? And they're like, no. Like, let's hope she dies, kind of thing.
Those are the people, yeah. They're like, no thanks.
No thanks. Yeah,
please.
You're on your own. Good luck.
Her.
Yeah, we're all rooting for you out here in the back. And of course, this was just a test, and Thrawn shows up. And of course, on brand for Thrawn, he leads in with talking about history, right? The history remembers the witches of Dathomir. I know who you are. I see you, Morgan Elsbeth. I know your people, kind of thing. So, I mean, that's typical Thrawn right there. He's already appealing to her in a way that no one else has. He talks about he's very interested. His interests are based on his admiration and her ambition. He's kind of putting down Isdane, or what was that other guy's?
Isdane, yeah.
Isdane. He puts him down, which again plays into Morgan Elsbeth, right? He's just kind of prepping her up here, all this. And then he says that he sees the rebellion as a sickness and it's a threat whereas his colleagues do not. So that foresight, the first thing that comes to mind is, somebody like Tarkin, as arrogant as they are, right? Again, just another breed of person here. So I hope people pick up on this, honestly, when you see Thrawn. I think they did a good job to kind of give us, I know we're still working on it, and everybody wants Thrawn from the Legends series, like in 5 minutes out of the gate, and that's not really what Star Wars does these days. It's a slow burn. We get more and more pieces over time, and that character continues to build. But these are very foundational pieces for Thrawn, these character traits that we're starting to see here. So, but yeah, he calls her designs brilliant, maybe not cost effective. So yeah, good and the bad, right? That seems kind of fair. And that eventually trading lives for profit will come out to be weak and disillusioned military. And he's 100% right. That's exactly what happens.
Right.
I mean, he's just spitting truth bombs the entire time. So, did you catch the people in the back when she kind of looks over there and they're kind of staring up at them? And there's one that yells revenge, and then the other one yells failure or witch. No, witch and failure.
Right.
Which I thought was like, she's got people yelling at her. They don't want her around there. And again, this is that kind of proverbial watershed moment where she's like, all right, I'm going to side with the Empire at this point because this is really the best option that I've got.
Yeah, and the first time I watched this, and I saw some chatter online too about, the Empire shunned her and then we're going to take advantage of her. And then Thrawn shows up. And why would she join the Empire then, right? It's not about the Empire, I think, for Morgan Elsbeth. Again, she found someone that she could actually have kindred spirits with that feels like a mutually beneficial relationship, and loyalty becomes important, right?
Well, and sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but we called this out many times in the Ahsoka series. We said over and over again, she's not loyal to the Empire. She's loyal to Thrawn.
Absolutely.
And that's about as far as it goes. And there's a difference there. And we see it right here. Sorry.
No, yeah, absolutely perfect point. Thank you for reiterating that. I mean, this is exactly what this is the beginning of that, right? This is the genesis of that relationship. He's saying the right things and he's not just saying the right things. This is what he truly believes. That
he's sincere about it, yeah.
Yeah, and they make sense. And again, it appeals back to what we saw at the beginning of this episode where it's just logic, right? And she's like, yes, someone finally that understands and gets this and is willing to invest in me in what we need to do. And then he comes to the table with resources and says, let me back it up with, 3 Star Destroyers. This is just the start. Don't worry about it. It's part of my fleet, not the whole thing. But we've got some really important work to do, right? And this is another part of wish we got a little more exploration about the important work. But if you know, I suppose. But that would have been another nice thing. But I really like that we're getting the genesis of this relationship. And, of course, we want more. And I think, and I think in the chat between what Stephanie was saying and what my Star Wars guys were saying, good call, Stephanie. I could definitely get into a novel featuring Morgan and Thrawn. And it kind of feels like there might be a book. And we like to do short stories in the books, of course, too. But then we're also getting some of these interesting novels these days where they're not the typical story of the Skywalkers or of the High Republic, right? They're these in between type of stories. These maybe not secondary characters, but like kind of the 1B type of characters. And I think Rob's on the money. I think a Morgan and Thrawn novel where they're in that space and developing and moving towards this overall plan of whatever's going on between between these events and what happens with the fall of the Emperor and everything that goes up to Mandalorian. I think it's fertile ground for them to explore something with these two characters and then to follow Morgan as she picks that journey up, later on in life. So I think this is really fertile ground for something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's everything he just did kind of culminates with him finally asking the question of like, okay, so tell me again, now that, you see where I'm coming from, you've trusted me. Tell me once again why it is you want to join the Empire kind of. And then she finally comes clean on what it is. And she just wants revenge. Anger gives me strength. It's that strength that I offer the Empire. And he's like, hell yeah, I'll take that. Right. So offers accepted. Like you said, he throws in the 3 Star Destroyers and a gym membership or whatever else. And then it ends with, he's like, we got great benefits, by the way. It ends with him saying, long live the Empire. Right. And then, or she says, he says that.
He says
then,
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then down below, like, what does that mean? They're like, not good. It means we won. Like, that's the end of Corvus pretty much at this point. But yeah, I just love the fact that last, you can see her smirk just very slightly at the very end. Like, I got what I need. Like, she's got the next step she's made the next step to get to her finale, if you will. So,
right. And what's the revenge? She wants everybody to feel the pain that she has felt for a big chunk of her, adolescent or however old she was through her adult life, right?
mm-hmm.
She wants to just simply inflict that upon the galaxy.
Yeah.
And I think quite honestly, I think that's about as complex as it gets from what Morgan Elsbeth true objectives are until she realizes, and we'll talk about this in the next episode, until she realizes that maybe there's a connection that she can reestablish, which I think is maybe a nice segue to Path of Hate.
Yeah, Path of Hate. All right. So this one opens up with the arrival of a New Republic ship. Lands on Corvus. Corvus looks very different now. It's very beaten, more weathered. Of course, the trees are still around there, but it just looks darker, grimier, if you will.
Yeah, and that space in front of the compound, of course, has now been cleared. So we're seeing a little bit of that inside the compound. There is no more greenery. You're right. It feels grayer, dingier, dirtier.
Dilapidated.
The roads aren't kept as well. It's just generally unkempt. In the background, when they do a wider shot, you still get the refinery or the industry on the left, but now you see a lot of it on the right, but now you see it on the left as well. And the whole back, it just feels like there's this general smoggy haze everywhere. So definitely industrialization has taken over, resource gathering. Things have happened that are not going well for the people.
Yeah. No, way to set the scene there. And of course, this is, we're introduced to Nadura, who was a former habitant of Corvus, and
you could see her briefly. You could see her briefly in the Path of Anger, as part of one of the people out there. At least,
do they show her? Okay,
or at least the same species or whatever she was.
It's probably got to be. I mean,
Yeah, but it was really quick. She didn't have a speaking line, I don't think.
Yeah.
Or she was just one of the background voices yelling.
But yeah, we get to see her show up, and of course she arrives, and she's kind of coming in now. Almost a little, I would say a little pretentious at times, a little arrogance in her pep in her step because she's got an army or a group of guards with her or whatever, soldiers. But it is a New Republic, and we got to remember what Mando and everybody else says. They are kind of a joke at this point for all the reasons.
Well, I think this is probably a little bit sooner than this. I think it's well before that. It felt like to me, at least, is that this is sometime soon after the fall of the Empire. So maybe things are coming up. But again, I think you're absolutely right, though, is that a little smugness, but also thinking that they can change the galaxy in a day. And we put a proposition, like all we have to do is you just have to step down and we're going to reshape this. We're going to bring you in. We're going to make everything right. We're going to right the wrongs of the past because now we're the New Republic. The Empire's fallen, and things don't really work like that in these places.
I mean, she's definitely coming in as, maybe a little young, a little naive.
Wanting to be the White Knight for her home. Yeah.
Right. She even says as much like, hey, well, let's just talk to Morgan. People change kind of thing. You're like, oh, well, that's not going to go well.
Yeah.
But so anyway, as she walks up there, of course, Wing recognizes her and they kind of have that little conversation. I thought it was crazy to think that they didn't even know that the Galactic Empire had fallen. Like, I don't know how much time has passed here, but, you know, he
I
says,
love the
"Oh,
way they
well,"
shape it too. News moves more slowly.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how slowly though? Is it months, years? I don't know. And
Yeah.
it speaks to where the current state of like Wing and those folks are. They're just workers and they don't get to talk. There's no communication, so it's got to be an invasion. Sorry, I had to work that in there.
Negotiations. We don't have any communication.
Right.
I remember so many more Phantom Menace lines now than
Oh,
I
yeah.
have in a very long time.
But you know, we learned that she's kind of a reclusive leader now. She doesn't really come out. You know, things are really bad. There's mercenaries that are kind of coming and going, so she's dealing with some pretty shady people. Everybody's afraid. And this is where Nardora is like, okay, well, let's go talk to her. Maybe she's a little bit different. And so they head in, like you mentioned, the entrance is kind of desolate when they get there. And Nardora, we learned that Nardora had actually petitioned Corvus to become a member of the New Republic on one condition, and that was that. I mean, she's telling this to Morgan, and the entire time you're walking, like, holy crap, this is gonna go bad. The first time I watched it, because I mean, she's basically telling her all you got to do is step down, right? And she threatens, you know, to arrest her if she doesn't. And all that really she's doing is she start from Morgan Elsbeth's perspective is you're a blocker now to my vision. So they can't be blockers. She's already seen what glory looks like. So it's death. You all are going to die now, and that's essentially what, you know, is kind of happening in her head here. But
don't
wow.
worry, she'll give you a fair trial.
Yeah.
Like, you pretentious little twit. Like, what? Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
You're not holding the Beskar spear. Boom.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, I think she says, I remember you, you know, you left because you didn't like the work conditions and which basically was slavery. And I think
Just called her lazy. Yeah.
Yeah. She was just lazy. Didn't want to work, wanted to push paper all day. Yeah, she talks about her vision, that she's seen her vision, right? And that she's going to fulfill her destiny. And then of course, Nardora is really dumb here. She says, and I will not allow that to happen. I'm like, well, that's your death warrant right there. You know, so, of course she doesn't allow it to happen. She says, step down willingly. And then she says, please. I guess, to be fair, she did say please.
She did ask very nicely. Yeah.
She asked nicely. She has very good manners. I will say that. But yeah, and then I think I forget now who it was. It might have been her, or might have been Zing or Wing, that says, "Don't burn down everything around you," which is kind of on the nose, given where
it was definitely her. Yeah,
yeah. But yeah, that's exactly what happens at the very end of this episode. Of course, is she does burn down everything, and so we're going to talk a little bit about here a little bit later. There's been a lot of questions. I've had 3 people ask me, "Why did she burn?" Not you included. Like you asked, we were just kind of talking out before we came on the show, but I've had now, I guess technically 4 people ask me, like, why did she burn down the forest? And I think it's part of this line. Like, I think it's kind of spiteful in the fact that someone told her, don't burn down everything around you. I'm going to do exactly that. Not only, you know, at the same time, I think there's some symbolism around the fact that the only life that was ever that left that these people could see were the tree line right outside their fort. And now that's gone. Right. So that just, I mean, symbolically, this is a dead kind of planet. But I guess this is where the retreat starts. She says, kill her. We can get into the specifics, but she makes it back to the ship right before some of Morgan Elsbeth's guards kind of plant those mines on there. The whole thing blows up, killing R8, which I thought was a cool looking droid. I wish I would have seen more of him or see him do more, but nonetheless, the whole thing blows up. And of course, you know, we called it, that was the scene that we had gotten from the trailer, and we put those 2 and 2 together. But anything you want to add around there's a lot of tension here, and I'm not going to do it justice, but of course, as she's trying to retreat and get back to her ship here.
Are we going to talk about the flames at the end now, or are we doing that later?
Let's see. Why don't we talk about? Yeah, we can talk about it now. I just said it looks like Bastrop circa 2011. No offense to anybody in Bastrop, Texas.
Yeah, not to laugh. I mean, but it's really sad. I mean,
it was devastating, like the way it looked.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the best quote, I think, of the entire 3-episode arc. You know, my world has been burning since I was a child. Why should this one be any different?
Mm-hmm.
And I really do think that this is what it was. It was all about punishing everyone else and burning the hope out of their souls, much like it was burned out of hers when she lost her people. I mean, it's really just saying it's history repeating itself. Look, you're going to experience exactly what I felt, and I don't really care how you interpret it. This is how it's going to be, and it destroys everything around him. This is why I understand maybe the incongruity here though a little bit too, because if there's resources, presumably those trees are part of the resources. You know, so is she cutting herself off at the knees? Was it necessary? But I got to be honest, it just all feels like, I mean, she already called it before in the previous episode. It's all about revenge. It's all about spite. It's all about taking things away from others because she feels so hollow and dead inside, I think. I mean, just my interpretation, but I mean, the only way that she feels any kind of life is to punish and hurt everyone else that she comes across and around her that's not working in her general direction that she has no respect for. So if you're not with me and you're not working towards my vision, then whatever, so be it. And she will work you to death or torture you or just off you entirely. And she does all three in this episode. So it's, pretty consistent, but I think that's what it's all about. I think it's just all about, she wants everybody to feel as bad as she do. And this is kind of the definition of narcissism in a lot of ways too, of, if I can't have it, you can't have it. And I'm going to punish you in every which way, psychologically, physically, emotionally, everything. And Morgan Elsbeth seems to be kind of winning in spades, as they like to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, let's not forget the title of this episode, which is Path of Hate, right? This is clearly a lot of hate being on display here.
And there's a whole lot of suffering as a result. Yep.
Yeah. Now, I like that you said narcissism because that's exactly what I had in here as kind of a character trait for her, and more on this next line, the next thing that she says. So she's gone out and acted a fool at this point, right? Burned down everything. She's killed a New Republic group. She's got all these people scared. And what does she say? I understand you might be frightened, but I'm here to assure you, you are all under my steadfast protection as everything is burning around her and they've been suffering. She says, you're under my, quote, protection.
And then her next line just completely throws that out the window.
The fires will continue burning. You will work night and day, but you do so knowing that you will be part of an effort that will save our galaxy from ruin. Like, that is narcissism right there. I mean, talk about gaslighting and talk about narcissism. That's just, the epitome of it. But
it's just not words for everything that she said there.
Not the best, like, morale boosting speech that I've heard personally, but
just a person who gives zero whats. And,
right. Yeah.
But also and I got to be honest, there was a lot of, it didn't come across in the dialogue this way or in the inflection, but there should have just been so much sarcasm like dripping within it. And I think it's mostly because Morgan Elsbeth is a relatively dry delivery. And I think that's a positive piece of feedback too. It's not a criticism, but where sarcasm doesn't fit in because you don't really know which way she leans a little bit. We had a little bit of this in Ahsoka too. Even when she'd make a comment and a little snarkiness would come out with Hati, but it was it wasn't really thick with it. It was a bit dry. And this is kind of one of those moments where I think it's this dry sarcasm of, you're all under my protection, obviously. Right. And, way overdoing it, of course, and not nearing as well as what Deanna Lee and Osita would be able to do. But still, she's just an awful, awful human being.
Since Steph says she must actually believe it, I actually do think she believes it. I think she's crazy, but that's usually what the best narcissists usually do, right? Right. So yeah, good stuff. Of course, the last part of this is Wing runs out to Nadora, who he sees, or he just as she's given this, riveting speech. And tells him that to be brave and that his time will come, kind of thing. I know you wanted to talk about when that time comes here, but just the last part of this is, of course, she drops a little distress comm or the comm link or whatever it is, and suddenly we hear Bo-Katan's voice saying, "Who is this? I received your distress signal. Come in." Morgan spears that thing, destroying it, ending the hope that he might have here. She says, "No one is coming." And then Wing is escorted back in and everything burns and she walks away with everything burning behind her. So very similar to the way the first episode opened.
Were you expecting Bo-Katan of all the people?
No.
Were you expecting Bo-Katan to be the one to answer the call?
No, and I've seen people that didn't like the fact that it was Bo-Katan, that was too kind of on the nose, but I don't really care. I mean, it's a way to tie it back.
It would have been more on the nose if it was Ahsoka, I would have thought.
Yeah.
I mean, what it does, though, is it tells you that they're together in some ways. Of course, we knew this already, but I think that's the bridge that I took from that. I was surprised, and I actually was like, that's kind of crazy, because I thought it was going to be Ahsoka, right? I figured it was going to be Ahsoka that would have picked up the line, but I was actually glad it wasn't. It was somebody else that but she is still working with Ahsoka. So it's, again, not being as on the nose, I think, as they could have been with a different character.
I mean, if it had just been anyone that said, "Who is this? What's your distress signal? Come in," I think it's still just as effective. For me, this was really just a way to say, okay, this is how Bo-Katan gets pulled into all of that. Very simplistic, and it's probably more complex than that. But this is at least the start of that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you want to? Did you want to come back to Wing and what that line about doing small parts?
Well, yeah, yes. The jury is telling you must be ready to do your part, even if it's small. You can make a difference, right? And I think that's always a message in Star Wars of you've got to be able to play do your part when there's time, be brave, have courage. And Wing does that in The Mandalorian, right? I believe, if I recall this, I believe he rescue Mando or save Mando or do something, right?
Yeah.
So again, no matter how small, take courage. And it's nice that this moment is what's going through his mind later on when it matters most in order to make a difference and help overthrow the magistrate and truly help make a difference. And he's not the grand hero necessarily, but he did play his part. And I love that the little guy and even the smallest things make a difference in Star Wars. I think those are some of the greatest stories that we have. And these great short stories, I think, do a fantastic job of bringing those moments to life and at least shedding light on a moment later on that we might see. And we see how the genesis of that idea or why they would have even taken that risk in the first place.
Yep. Yeah. And you're right. We've seen so many countless tales of the little guys doing little things or somebody that's not one of the big Jedi or, look at the cast of Rogue One, right?
Right. And clearly Wing, is a leader in the community in whatever way. And it sounds like he used to be the magistrate and was kind of bequeathed his power over to Elsbeth for whatever reason that might have been. They didn't really tell us, but so he's got a little bit of things to make up for him. Probably feels like he's got a lot of blood on his hands too. So those help motivate you a little bit. But when the moment's there and you got to take it, you still have to do it. So it takes a lot.
So I think overall, I guess to kind of wrap up on this episode, I mean, we got introduced to some new aspects of Morgan Elsbeth. We definitely have a better understanding of where she came from, why she's doing most of the thing that she's doing. I think some of the unanswered questions that I still have is I don't know that it's not clear what that vision is. Yeah. Maybe in Ahsoka, we get a little bit more of that. It starts it feels like that's two different visions here. Like, I don't think she had the vision of going to Peridia, right? When she's in these episodes, when she's talking about that, I think it's solely based around revenge. She says as much, I think, in the second episode. But what that revenge looks like who is it that she's trying to get revenge on? It could be everybody, like you said. It could just be general hate, right? Burn it all down kind of thing, literally burn everything kind of down. But we've always talked about what would happen if she found out that, that Palpatine is the same person that was behind the Separatists who are the ones that killed her people, right? What would that do to her relationship with Ron? What would that do with her vision, or who would she want to get revenge against? Because she's not going to touch Palpatine. We know that for a fact. So that's not really clear to me as far as what her vision is. There's trivial things maybe in some ways, like the spear. We talked about that. I think when we watched the Ahsoka series, we just kind of, I think the theory at least, or speculated that, well, the Empire has pretty much run all the Mandalorians out. They've collected all the armor. They're burning it down. They're just making stuff up. And maybe they gave her bars of it. And she's like, oh, I'm going to craft a spear out of this thing. And that could still be the case, but she's already got it now. And I don't think we've gotten to that part yet in the timeline with the Mandos and the Night of 1,000 Days, or what is it? Where the heck that was? Tears, yeah. I don't think we've gotten there yet. So how does she come across a Beskar spear, given that's not something that the Mandalorians would ever create? We know that for a fact now. So that's still open. I don't know much about her technical background, and I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. I totally am. I love the fact, like I said, that she's now the person that was she had the vision for the TIE Defenders, and that program was created because of her. But, there's a gap there that I want to know, like, where did she get that technical expertise and background? Because she was a Dathomirian witch, and she was living with mountain witches for a little while, and then suddenly she's now in Corvus. And there's a big gap there. Don't get me wrong. I get it. There's a lot of time. But now I'm interested to understand, like, how did that happen? Like, where did she, cut her teeth on that?
Right. Yeah, I think my questions are kind of in the same ballpark. I mean, the spear is interesting because clearly she has it before she's even encountered the Empire. So where does that story come from? That's probably more of an interesting thing. Yeah, the technical expertise, I didn't really have much question in that space because I think, again, enough time has gone by. She's going to build herself into a force, and clearly she has. So education and things like that are a huge part of that. So that's clear. I think some of my questions really were more of the relationship with Thrawn. Like, what was that enough to really tell us how loyal she would be? I think there's a lot of things that would point you in that right direction, but again, they clearly worked together probably for a few years. before all of this stuff happens with, within
Yeah.
Rebels where Thrawn dies, of course. But,
Mhm.
so, or when Thrawn goes away, sorry, doesn't die.
Yeah. Hello. Come on.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm thinking Heir of the Empire, right? Right. Sorry. But anyway, I think the other part, though, is also when she mentions that she has a vision of what the future holds in this last episode. I mean, clear to me, I viewed that as clearly she's probably been talking to the other Night Sisters out on Peridia, or there's someone is speaking something to her, because that's after the events of, this part of it's after the events of Return of the Jedi, right? Because the New Republic is there.
Yeah.
Ron's been over there for a long time. Presumably, now we don't know how many years, to your point earlier, we don't know how many years or how slowly news travels out to this part of the galaxy, from the New Republic. So has it been months or has it been years? How close is this to the Mandalorian timeline exactly? We're closer, but I would love to have a little bit more information about, what was actually said, what were the feelings, like the things that we didn't get at Ahsoka. Could we have filled in a couple of those gaps here? I think there were opportunities. Not necessarily, you didn't have to do it, and clearly they didn't, but that they mentioned it, I think was a really good touch. But we always want a little bit more, right? Because it was such an interesting aspect, and have this side of it, or in this, kind of from this part of the timeline on it, the front end of it, I think would have been really interesting to understand how that worked and what that effect had on the character, right? And that part, I don't think, that's probably the part that didn't come through enough, is she's working towards some vision, but that really never really manifests itself, and you don't really get a feel. And you can explain, okay, that's probably why she's in the compound all the time.
Yeah.
That's why she's not getting out. She's communing. She's doing whatever this plan is in a post-Empire, post-Thrawn, whatever, timeline. But it would have been great to see that in the series a little bit more of what's pushing towards the future, not just who she is in this revenge moment. But I get it. The theme of these 3 episodes was not necessarily that. And that would have been giving her hope. And so I think to contradict all the things that I would have liked to have seen, I can explain why they don't, because you want this to all be very, code driven, right? The Yoda's line, rather,
Yeah. Right.
all that good stuff. So to bring in hope and to bring in things of reconnecting and to have something to look forward to would have been at odds with this, and would have started to bring in some sort of sympathy and empathy for the character, which clearly we didn't want to do here, right?
Yeah, and I don't think I walked away with anything like at all, and which is a good thing. Like that's
First episode, sure.
Sure.
I mean, you're feeling it and you're like crazy, but by the end of that one, and as you start to get towards the other ones, it all evaporates, right? She's burned it all away, quite literally.
Yeah, I mean, she's a terrible person, and I get it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I understand why she is the way she is, but she's bad. By the way, and to kind of put a bow on this, all of these stories were, of course, Dave Filoni's mind, right? From Dave Filoni's mind. So, if anybody's doubting whether or not, this is the end of Morgan Elsbeth, no, it's not. She's going to come back. We'll see more of her. We'll get more of her, whether it's in animation, maybe live action. I think someone threw out the theory. I think one up says they'll probably resurrect her in Ahsoka. I could totally see that happening. She's a good, DeSanto is such a good ambassador for Star Wars. You see her out there and she talks so highly of it. This means a lot to her. She's very sincere, much like Ashley Eckstein. When you see Ashley talking about Star Wars and what it means to her, and we can rattle off all kinds of people like this in that same group, but the fact that that's all the same, but that Dave Filoni's behind all these stories, a lot of these answers probably will come out at some point. So that bodes well for the character's future. And then last thing I just want to call out is I thought the writing was really good. We didn't talk about this, but Amanda Rose Munoz, I don't know where she's come from. I think this is the first thing that she's done for Star Wars, and I could be wrong, but I didn't get a chance to look into it. But I love the writing on all 3 of these episodes. I thought she did a great job with the writing. So kudos to her. I hope we get to see more of her behind the scenes.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions in the live stream chat before we call it a night here. So Dale had one, Skywalker's Academy. This part doesn't make sense. This is in the New Republic era, but Thrawn disappeared with Ezra at the end of Rebels and doesn't come back to the known galaxy before Morgan goes to rescue him. So, so the second episode is during the Empire days, and this one is during the New Republic. So I'm not really sure which part. Yeah, we're not following there, Dale. So you might come back to us on that one about where it's at. But
he says, yet it's before the TIE Defender program in Rebels.
Yeah.
Is the next question he's got there. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, it's before the TIE Defender. So, TIE Defender program was during the Imperial days. So that would have been during the second episode, which again was during Rebels. That was how many years after the fall of, or after Order 66 was Rebels? You're the Rebels
It
expert.
was like 5 years before Phantom, or before
New Hope.
before New Hope. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it was probably in that similar timeline then of where Rebels was at. So that's where the program started to get spun up. So I'd imagine this was close to or slightly before where we would join Rebels up. At least that would seem to make sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yep. And then Steph had one here. Normally, Star Wars does a better job making you like a bad guy, but they didn't try real hard with Morgan. No, they really, I mean, like at the start, you kind of did, right? I mean, losing everything and you feel awful, but then, yeah, you see the decisions. And just because bad things happen to you doesn't give you an excuse to, behave and live your life in that way and punish everyone around you just because you're suffering.
Yeah. And listen, we know the fate of her. Like if you look at it, the whole story, it's kind of tragic the way it ends for her. She finally gets what she wants and, gets put down by Ahsoka, and nothing pans out like the way she thinks it's going to pan out. So the good guys don't win here. The bad guys don't win here. So we can have all the sympathy we want when you can side with her if you'd like to, but at the end of the day, she's a bad person and, bad things happen to bad people.
Yeah, and I'm kind of okay with some of this too. It's the same with Thrawn. Thrawn's a bad guy, right? I mean, within the context of our galaxy, he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
And there's really no question about it. He's super intelligent, very insightful, very critical, like amazing critical thinking skills, and
he's intriguing.
Intriguing. Builds a lot of loyalty around his crew. You know why people follow him. But look, guys, he sucks. I mean, he's the worst, right? I mean, and I think his lines here in the second episode really do accentuate that and really do highlight that. Like, we need to eradicate this rebellion. I believe in this empire. I believe in the mantra of it at the very least. And all of these others, they just need to be eradicated. And if you're going to have order, you can't do it with them here.
Steph says you leave Thrawn alone, so I'll let you deal with that after the show.
Yeah.
But hey, I don't know how to segue into this. You want to give some shout outs to everybody that joined us for the live stream tonight?
Yeah, some things I don't want to wait till later to deal with. They're going to be giving huge shout outs to our live stream folks. Again, if you're listening to this, thank you so much for the download. We hope you come out to cantinacast.com/YouTube. We try to do this at least twice a week, and we're going to come back on Saturday for another couple of great shows. But we hope you'll join us for the live stream and have some amazing conversation with these amazing people. We can put your comments up on screen, try to answer your questions as we can. Like JJ Skywalker, Steph, One Up versus CPU, Skywalker's Academy, Sky, Zoralans, My Star Wars Guy, Naveed, Rainer, Rebel Scum, anybody in the background. If I mispronounced your name or missed you, not intentional, my sincerest apologies, but we do thank you so much for coming out. It's a real pleasure and honor for y'all to come out and join us and, just spend a little time with us and talk some Star Wars. We hope you enjoy it. We enjoy having y'all out here with us.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on the Cantina Cast. We know you've got a lot of options out there. Sorry.
A lot of options.
A lot of options, but definitely appreciate that time. So, all right. Again, we'll be back on Saturday to do all this again, but this time with the Barris Offee episode. And after that, Jonesy and I will be talking Phantom Menace for our Patreon members. So there's still an opportunity to get out to cantinacast.com/Patreon. Join in on that conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun because I got a lot of memories and a lot of things to say about that movie. All right. Anything else, Jonesy, before we get out of here?
Nope. Looking forward to Saturday, my friend.
All right. We'll see everybody then. Thanks for joining us.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.